"That's so," she said, "but I thank you for the offer, Mr. Kent." Kent could have sworn that there was an appeal in her eyes, and he stood for a moment indecisive, Jandron's stare upon him. After a moment's thought he turned to Krell. "You were going to show me the damage the exploding tubes did," he said, and Krell nodded quickly. "Of course. You can see from the head of the stair back in the after deck." He led the way along a corridor, Jandron and the girl and two of the men coming with them. Kent's thoughts were still chaotic as he walked between Krell and Liggett. What was this girl doing amid the men of the Martian Queen? What had her eyes tried to tell him? Liggett nudged his side in the dim corridor, and Kent, looking down, saw dark splotches on its metal floor. Blood stains. His suspicions strengthened. They might be from the bleeding of those wounded in the tube explosions. But were they? They reached the afterdeck, whose stairs head gave a view of the wrecked tube rooms beneath. The lower decks had been smashed by terrific forces. Kent's practiced eyes ran rapidly over the shattered rocket tubes. "They've backblasted from being fired too fast," he said. "Who was controlling the ship when this happened?" "Galling, our second officer," answered Krell. "He had found us rooted too close to the dead area's edge and was trying to get away from it in a hurry when he used the tubes too fast, and half of them backblasted." "If Galling was at the controls in the pilot house, how did the explosion kill him?" asked Liggett skeptically. Krell turned quickly. "The shock threw him against the pilot house wall and fractured his skull. He died in an hour," he said. Liggett was silent. "Well, this ship will never move again," Kent said. "It's too bad that the explosion blew out your tanks, but we ought to find fuel somewhere in the wreck pack for the Pallas. And now we'd best get back." As they returned up the dim corridor, Kent managed to walk beside Marta Mallen, and without being seen he contrived to detach his suit phone, the compact little radio phone case inside his spacesuit's neck, and slip it into the girl's grasp. He dared utter no word of explanation, but apparently she understood, for she had concealed the suit phone by the time they reached the upper deck. Kent and Liggett prepared to don their space helmets, and before entering the airlock, Kent turned to Krell. "We'll expect you at the Pallas first hour tomorrow, and we'll start searching the wreck pack with a dozen of our men," he said. He then extended his hand to the girl. "Goodbye, Miss Mallen. I hope we can have a talk soon." He had said the words with double meaning, and saw understanding in her eyes. "I hope we can too," she said. Kent's nod to Jandron went unanswered, and he and Liggett adjusted their helmets and entered the airlock. Once out of it, they kicked rapidly away from the Martian Queen, floating along the wreck pack's huge mass to their right, and only the star-flecked emptiness of infinity to their left. In a few minutes they reached the airlock of the Pallas. They found Captain Crane awaiting them anxiously. Briefly, Kent reported everything. "I'm certain there has been foul play aboard the Martian Queen," he said. "Krell, you saw for yourself. Jandron is pure brute, and their men seem capable of anything. I gave the suit phone to the girl, however, and if she can call us with it, we can get the truth from her. She dared not tell me anything there in the presence of Krell and Jandron." Crane nodded, his face grave. "We'll see whether or not she calls," he said. Kent took a suit phone from one of their spacesuits and rapidly tuned it to match the one he had left with Marta Mallen. Almost at once they heard her voice from it, and Kent answered rapidly. "I'm so glad I got you," she exclaimed. "Mr. Kent, I dared not tell you the truth about this ship when you were here, or Krell and the rest would have killed you at once." "I thought that was it. That's why I left the suit phone for you," Kent said. "Just what is the truth?" "Krell and Jandron and these men of theirs are the ones who killed the officers and passengers of the Martian Queen. What they told you about the explosion was true enough, for the explosion did happen that way, and because of it the ship drifted into the dead area. But the only ones killed by it were some of the tube men and 3 passengers. Then, while the ship was drifting into the dead area, Krell told the men that the fewer aboard, the longer they could live on the ship's food and air. Krell and Jandron led the men in a surprise attack and killed all the officers and passengers and threw their bodies out into space. I was the only passenger they spared because both Krell and Jandron want me." There was a silence, and Kent felt a red anger rising in him. "Have they dared harm you?" he asked after a moment. "No, for Krell and Jandron are too jealous of each other to permit the other to touch me. But it's been terrible living with them in this awful place." "Ask her if she knows what their plans are in regard to us," Crane told Kent. Marta had apparently overheard the question. "I don't know that, for they shut me in my cabin as soon as you left," she said. "I've heard them talking and arguing excitedly, though. I know that if you do find fuel, they'll try to kill you all and escape from here in your ship." "Pleasant prospect," Kent commented. "Do you think they plan an attack on us now?" "No. I think that they'll wait until you've refueled your ship, if you are able to do that, and then try treachery." "Well, they'll find us ready, Miss Malin. You have the suit phone. Keep it hidden in your cabin, and I'll call you first thing tomorrow. We're going to get you out of there, but we don't want to break with Krell until we're ready. Will you be all right until then?" "Of course I will," she answered. "There's another thing, though. My name isn't Miss Malin. It's Marta." "Mine's Rance," said Kent, smiling. "Goodbye until tomorrow, then, Marta." "Goodbye, Rance." Kent rose from the instrument with the smile still in his eyes, but with his lips compressed. "Damn it! There's the bravest and finest girl in the solar system," he exclaimed. "Over there with those brutes." "We'll have her out, never fear," Crane reassured him. "The main thing is to determine our course toward Krell and Jandron." Kent thought. "As I see it, Krell can help us immeasurably in our search through the wreck pack for fuel," he said. "I think it would be best to keep on good terms with him until we've found fuel and have it in our tanks. Then we can turn the tables on them before they can do anything." Crane nodded thoughtfully. "I think you're right. Then you and Liggett and Krell can head our search party tomorrow." Crane established watches on a new schedule, and Kent and Liggett and the dozen men chosen for the exploring party of the next day ate a scanty meal and turned in for some sleep. When Kent awoke and glimpsed the massed wrecks through the window, he was for the moment amazed, but rapidly remembered. He and Liggett were finishing their morning ration when Crane pointed to a window. "There comes Krell now," he said, indicating the single spacesuited figure approaching along the wreck pack's edge. "I'll call Marta before he gets here," said Kent hastily. The girl answered on the suit phone immediately, and it occurred to Kent that she must have spent the night without sleeping. "Krell left a few minutes ago," she said. "Yes, he's coming now. You heard nothing of their plans?" "No. They've kept me shut in my cabin. However, I did hear Krell giving Jandron and the rest directions. I'm sure they're plotting something." "We're prepared for them," Kent assured her. "If all goes well, before you realize it, you'll be sailing out of here with us in the Pallas." "I hope so," she said. "Rance, be careful with Krell in the wreck pack. He's dangerous." "I'll be watching him," he promised. "Goodbye, Marta." Kent reached the lower deck just as Krell entered from the airlock, his swarthy face smiling as he removed his helmet. He carried a pointed steel bar. Liggett and the others were donning their suits. "All ready to go, Kent?" Krell asked. Kent nodded. "All ready," he said shortly. Since hearing Marta's story, he found it hard to dissimulate with Krell. "You'll want bars like mine," Krell continued, "for they're damned handy when you get jammed between wreckage masses. Exploring this wreck pack is no soft job, I can tell you from experience." Liggett and the rest had their suits adjusted, and with bars in their grasp followed Krell into the airlock. Kent hung back for a last word with Crane, who, with his half-dozen remaining men, was watching. "Marta just told me that Krell and Jandron have been plotting something," he told the captain, "so I'd keep a close watch outside. Don't worry, Kent. We'll let no one inside the Pallas until you and Liggett and the men get back." In a few minutes they were out of the ship, with Krell and Kent and Liggett leading, and the 12 members of the Pallas crew following closely. The 3 leaders climbed up on the Uranus-Jupiter passenger ship that lay beside the Pallas, the others moving on and exploring the neighboring wrecks in parties of 2 and 3. From the top of the passenger ship, when they gained it, Kent and his 2 companions could look far out over the wreck pack. It was an extraordinary spectacle, this stupendous mass of dead ships floating motionless in the depths of space, with the burning stars above and below them. His companions and the other men clambering over the neighboring wrecks seemed weird figures in their bulky suits and transparent helmets. Kent looked back at the Pallas, and then along the wreck pack's edge to where he could glimpse the silvery side of the Martian Queen. But now Krell and Liggett were descending into the ship's interior through the great opening smashed in its bows, and Kent followed. They found themselves in the liner's upper navigation rooms. Officers and men lay about, frozen to death. At the instant the meteor struck the vessel's air had rushed out, and the cold of space had entered. Krell led the way on, down into the ship's lower decks, where they found the bodies of the crew and passengers lying in the same silent death. The salons held